So I'm just going to talk through what I'm doing here. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. So I'm creating some new RPG games. First, let me just briefly introduce myself. My name's James. I've been playing tabletop RPGs for more years than I care to think of. Now it's nearly 30 years. Started off with Dungeons and Dragons and a few kind of 80s offbeat games. Really got into it when third edition, not 3.5, but the original third edition came out. Played a lot of that in my kind of early to mid teens. And then just never really stopped. So anyway, I like to games master more than I like to play. I enjoy playing, but I find games mastering particularly fun. And one of the things that I'm working on at the moment is a series of sort of self-contained boxed game RPGs. And they're meant to sort of straddle the line between a full-blown RPG where you have all the responsibility of learning the rule sets and having a games master be fully in charge of it, and a tabletop game which is much more constrained. I suppose they're designed to sort of sit in a similar marketplace to things like Escape from the Dark Sector and that side of games, but with their own kind of flavor. Each one is designed to have 3 acts and to essentially be played over the course of 3 sessions. And I'll talk through some of the design decisions and what I've got so far. I've got 6 games that I've essentially drafted and sort of play tested, and they are largely drawn from games that I have run in the past as a games master. So they've had a degree of playtesting already, and they're based on sessions that I felt went well, and maybe that I've run a couple of times. And yeah, that's the idea. So I'm going to build these and hopefully take them to market. My aim is to get them made up to a point where I can have a boxed version that I take with me and go and get a stall at the UK Games Expo in 2027. So I've got about a year to give or take. That should be doable. And then possibly do a soft launch at that point. Possibly do that soft launch after. We'll see. This is not a great commercial endeavor. I have no illusions that I'm going to become a rich man from doing this. This is about doing something that I genuinely want to do, that I find really fun, and that I've enjoyed doing for many, many years, and think that I'll have a good time sharing with others. So yeah, it would just be a nice personal achievement to do this. These are products that I think I would like to play, and so hopefully there are going to be at least a few other people out there that might share my love for them and get some enjoyment. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to stream myself doing them for a couple of things. One, it's good for discipline. I'm going to make some videos as well along the way, trying to share what's working, what's not working. It might even be good for marketing, who knows. It would be nice to have some people that either want to playtest a free version or maybe even make a few sales down the road to have something to show for all the work and effort goes into it. And then the third reason to stream a lot of the creation process, which is maybe not quite as nice, is that in the modern world with AI as it stands, it seems prudent to have proof that what you do is human made, because there is an awful lot of fast slop content that's just being poured out there. It's worth saying from the outset that I'm doing everything by hand. So I'll be doing my own artwork. It says, reaching over. So I don't know if you can see this there. So this is a dip pen. This is a pot of ink. So I'm working with these for the traditional artwork, and then I have it's under my desk. A tablet screen display that I paint on using Rebelle and Clip Studio for anything that's sort of digital painting. I'm not the best, but I'm good enough. And I personally think, and I think that most other people still think, that there is more value in even not the best quality, but homemade, or human-made, I should say, artwork than There is in say using something that's generative, which yeah. So yeah, I'm streaming this and I'm going to document the journey, partly for my own sake, for my own sanity, just to share some of the process, and partly because I think it's probably worthwhile documenting that I am the one making this. I've been making these games for many, many years. I'm going to be making some supporting stuff as well with it. So I don't know if you can see, but I play music as well. That's a rack of guitars over there. There are amps under here and so forth. There's a keyboard back there. I use Fruity Loops for a lot of stuff. So I'll be making a supporting site at some point and putting up some things like some basic soundtracks and other bits that maybe can be supporting media. Again, all human made, and I'm going to try and document that. So anyway, now, so the game that I'm working on at the moment is one called Age of Fear, and it's a kind of detective-based game. The players are investigators, and they get to a town where there is a problem where there's suddenly been some murders, and there's also been some disappearances. Nobody quite knows what's going on. There's been something like that in the past, and they have to figure out what is going on and potentially deal with the consequences of that. The games aren't meant to be like enormously original. So if you look at these and think, "Oh, we've kind of seen these in different formats before," yeah, of course. I mean, they're RPG games. They're meant to, in a way, capture the stuff that you already understand and allow you to play through. So they're not meant to be enormous, great works of fiction, and I have no illusions to that. But hopefully they will be fun. So in Age of Fear, let's just run through the basic plot here. I'm a great believer that plot is not that important, by the way. So I know that people sometimes get very worried about spoilers. If for any reason you care about spoilers to my RPGs, then look away now. I assume nobody cares. But yeah, so the idea is essentially that we have a knitting circle of grannies who are actually witches and have been alive and living in the town for hundreds of years. And that every time they get to a certain point in their life cycle, when they get into what appears to be their 70s, they drain the life from a collection of young people and then regain their own youth and then proceed to live essentially another lifetime. And that is happening now. It last happened about 50 years ago, so they kind of regress from their 70s to their 20s, and they live another 50 years, and then they repeat the process. And so our investigators are going to go sort of discover different things. So then let's talk about how a box game works. So I have a rules system. I call it Simple Six, which is it uses a single six-sided dice. It has a relatively streamlined set of rules. I have them up online, and I can post a link to them. It's designed to be very easy to understand, much simpler than something like Dungeons and Dragons or a full-blooded RPG. And it's fully intended for you to sort of be able to pick up and play easily. The reason it uses a D6 is because when I designed the rules, I wanted to make them as accessible as possible. And I figured that the vast majority of people probably have a six-sided dice somewhere. And if they don't, getting one is generally going to be trivial, no matter where you live in the world, no matter how much budget you've got. You can probably get a single six-sided dice. More fancy components, that can be a bit more of a challenge. So it uses those rules. And then we have a deck of cards for different actions. We have large cards that represent your places. So in the box, we'll get a stack of these like A5 sized cards. They represent the different key locations. And so as the story unfolds, the games master will place those cards onto the table, and sometimes things will happen when you first get them out. So it'll be like, reference this event, reference that event. And there are some decision trees involved in that process. So depending upon what choices you've made or what things you've discovered or what the outcomes of previous things may have been, those decision trees can change and can impact what happens on those events. And then they stay out on the table so you can see them. So in the case of Age of Fear, the first one that comes out is the guest house that you're staying in when you get to the town. There's the local police station. There is the local park where something happens. There is a town hall meeting. There's a whole host of these, right? And so by having these physical cards on the table that represent these different locations, you kind of form an abstract map. It's not a map in the sense of it showing you the overall geography of the area, but it gives you a sense of the key places. Now, it's not to say that if you want to play this more as a proper RPG, and you can do that, or you can be a bit more narrow and follow the rules more strictly. If you wanted to do the full RPG side of things, and that's something the game supports, you of course can have your own locations and encounters that go above and beyond those, and it's entirely down to you as a group and your games master as to how you handle that. But these are the core locations, and I think that's really helpful because it reminds players where they can go. It gets them a sense of the space without having to worry about maps. Maps are fussy because you have to build out loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of irrelevant detail, and it probably doesn't really matter too much where the park is in relation to the guest house as such. It just matters that you know that those are two big locations. If you think about any book or film that you've ever seen, and they go from one place to another, assuming it's not a real world place that you're already familiar with, you don't know. I mean, I've watched what's the film No Country for Old Men recently. I have no idea the spatial difference between the hotel where Llewellyn is sitting and the place where he finds the money. I have no idea where, from his hotel or motel, I suppose, to the place where the final scene takes place. I get a sense that it's kind of in the same area, but it doesn't matter to me that it's 3.5 blocks west or whatever it might be. It just matters that it's, from a narrative point of view, placed together. So that's the idea for here. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling for the time being. So I'm literally just going to start working through this, and I'm just going to stream myself doing it, and we'll see. We'll go from there. Cool. Right. So. Doing this all in Google Sheets. We'll go back and edit all this to begin with. Just, I think it's always easier to get something down, even if what you put down is terrible. It's much easier to go from something that is bad to not to good than it is from not zero to good. Same way that it's easier to like edit somebody else's work than it is to build something yourself. So write something, even if it ends up being terrible, and then you can come back and you can edit someone else's work, which is a much easier task, even if that someone else is your past self. Game structure. broad outline. So this is obviously sounding quite linear at the moment. It's not going to be that as we go through. We just want to get a general sense of it. So let's flesh these out now. So we also, let's make some sections. So we want actually let's also go up here and make this a heading 1 and heading 2. Cool. Not bad. I always find Google Sheets a bit tricky to use like this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and if anyone knows, I just wanted to. Yeah, that's what I wanted. So Act 1 scenes, Act 2 scenes, and Act 3 scenes. Let's think through these. So Act 1 is following the characters as they arrive in town. The introductory scene is the only thing that's completely fixed. So we have like an introduction that's read aloud to the players to sort of set the tone. They arrive and they get this introductory scene. And then immediately, in the context of that introductory scene, they discover at least 2 and possibly 3 other places that they can meaningfully go to continue their adventure. So the introductory scene, they get to this guest house. They meet the owner of the guest house, who is an elderly woman herself. She welcomes them to the town. She's a little fuddy-duddy. They see that the town is a little bit old-fashioned, a little bit backward. It doesn't necessarily get terribly many visitors. It's quite a remote place. They have a chance to interact with her. They have a chance to get a little bit of a sense of what that's like. And then throughout the course of that interaction, she provides them with, by default, information on 2 additional locations, and if pressed for particular questions, potentially 3. And then it's down to the players to choose where they're going to go next. So at that point, we would set out the 3 locations. The location cards are set out in a way where they have a plain, they have a back that's just an image, and then when you flip them, they have some text sections as well. They're almost like a giant version, like a trading card. And that text gives you some stuff that happens the first time you get there. And it's, depending upon the text, it might be pertinent for further investigations or going back there later on. So it might be that you get somewhere and it turns out that there is a object of particular use at that place, and so that card stays. Or it might say that the first time you get hit, or whatever the case. Not necessarily first time stuff. It's just that once you go there for the first time, you turn that over, and it tells you some important things about that particular location. So let's have a think about that. So intro scene. Again, this is not going to be the text for the scene. It's just going to be a sense of getting an idea down on the page first of all. So this idea that the introductory scene, we're going to have them turn up there. They're going to get to that guest house. They get a chance to speak to the initial character, and then once we've done that, we set out the optional scenes where they can venture further. So it's a warm building. pros. So that will be on the location card. So it's just saying once you turn these location cards over, which are kind of like A5 sized cards, that's all set out there. So you get that set, and you can read through that as your first encounter with that particular thing. So in this case, we're talking about the guest house. So once I get inside immediately the guest house, she greets them, is able to talk about the town history and also the recent murders. Directions to following locations. And pressed the card may also provide where latest. Okay. So midnight, so it's time for me to call that quits anyway. So we've got a little bit done today. I've got to carry on working on this. I'll try and stream some more of this tomorrow, and potentially we can do a video